Welcome to Jasiri. It's Wednesday, and today we're diving into one of Nigeria's biggest challenges, corruption. It's a word we hear all the time, but beyond the headlines and political speeches, what real progress is being made? So according to the 2024 Corruption Perceptions Index, Nigeria has inched up slightly in the global rankings. But does that really mean things are improving? From judicial corruption and oil theft to state capture and whistleblower suppression, corruption still seeps into every corner of society. So the question is, where do we stand in the fight against corruption? Are we really making progress or just moving in circles? And more importantly, what needs to change for Nigeria to truly turn the tide? We have a lot of unpacking to do today. So stay with us as we break it all down right here on Jasiri.
Interesting. Very, sounds loaded. But first, we need to get into our icebreaker conversation. The National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, that's NAPTIP, has intercepted 13 girls suspected to be victims of human trafficking at Nnenna Eze International Airport in Abuja. The girls were en route to Baghdad, Iraq, where they were likely to face sexual and labor exploitation. NAPTIP's press officer Vincent Adekoye stated that the victims, aged between 19 and 39 years, were allegedly deceived are recruited by unregistered labor agents believed to be part of a larger criminal network operating between Nigeria and some Middle Eastern countries.
Now, their interception followed a tip-off from concerned partners who noticed unusual movements at the airport's departure lounge. Suspicious recruiters, accompanied by timid-looking girls, reportedly gave identical responses to different questions about their destination, raising alarms. Now, NAPTIP's Director General, Binta Adamu-Bello, who witnessed the interception of 5 of the girls at the airport before heading to Adamawa, condemned the traffickers' deceitful tactics. She urged parents and guardians to remain vigilant against fake promises that could endanger their children.
So I'm happy that these young women were intercepted, but there obviously seems to be a lot of work that we need to do. And I wonder really how much they don't know. Because the last thing that Binta Adamu-Bello said was that the tactics that the traffickers were using, deceitful tactics, and parents and guardians needed to remain vigilant against fake promises. I remember the special investigation that News Central did about the young boys who were promised jobs in Ghana. And then they ended up being taken to Ghana, trafficked to Ghana, and then they were made to do Yahoo or Hustle Kingdom in a small house somewhere in the outskirts of Accra, Ghana. And so at the end of the day, they did tell their families they were traveling for work. But I wonder what the interrogation of the promises actually ends up being. We know that things are hard, and I know somebody's going to be like, oh, what can you expect? People need to make ends meet, that is poverty. But your child is saying that somebody is offering them a job, or somebody is saying, come and be a cook. Are we not here? Is the news not outside enough? The news is not outside enough.
There are different variations of truth that we hear on a daily basis. It's easy for us on this table to say some things. When you get to some low-income households, all these things that we say on a daily basis, it goes over their head. Wow. Most of the time, they are thinking in naira and kobo. And most of the people that do this bad thing, they are mostly trusted. It might be one uncle around the street that a lot of the children gravitate towards, and they see as an epitome or a symbol of advancement. When that kind of person talks to your family, you're going to look at him and say, he's successful. And that means if my child can be under him, he'll be apprentice. You tell them they take your child abroad.
There has to be a niggling feeling. There has to be, everyone has that feeling where sometimes we all have those moments where we say, I didn't feel something was right. Something wasn't right.
So again, I feel like especially the ladies who are much older.
Quell it.
Yeah, and to be more mature. For them, it's like, it's 50-50. You know this motivational speech, like, what if it doesn't work, but what if it works? Right. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah. So they know, some of them know the risks associated with it. They know what they're getting into. And I'm talking about the older ones. There's some who are just plain naive, and like Lolo said, very trusting of the people who bring this opportunity their way. But there are a lot of people who know what is in it. But again, we're back to, it's not my portion syndrome. Some people know that they're like, no, my case is different. It won't happen to me. I will enter it and I'll succeed. So let's not be surprised by how much people weigh their options and still go into it.
Honestly, really, that thing, I like that. We should make it a thing. That I will, what did you just say?
It will not be my portion.
It will not be my portion syndrome.
On the flip side, everyone's
Truly.
on social media. Everything is on social media. You wash your dirty laundry, you sit there in your compound and you're washing your undies. People, it's social media content. So because of how rampant we are focused on social media, we really are stuck there on social media. And this is not the first time these things have been coming out. So we have heard it, but going back to what Blessing said, it's not my portion syndrome.
Honestly.
You can't say you haven't heard things like that, trickles, you know.
They might have heard it, but
I struggle to believe what Lolo said.
We just say, God forbid. Do you know how quick to say, God forbid?
You know, a lot of people will tell you that, oh, you might go through hardship, but you might be the first, you might be the one. Some might even convince their children that hardship is not something. I know you I told you the story of when I went to America. I told Tolu, I didn't go to America. I'm just talking about 3 years ago. I am an adult. I'm not a child. I went to stay with a friend that had promised my daughter could stay with them. I ended up feeling like I was enslaved in this present time. So sometimes it's not about, it can be the trust, over trusting of the people that come to them. Sometimes is not my portion syndrome. And do you know that the realities that we paint to people, you know, we paint it in words. Those people tell you stories. But the reality of going to Libya and dying in the desert is still in our imagination. It's like a thing that you fictionalize.
Anyway, the truth is, I hear you, Lola, the truth is, people will always, no matter how NAPTIP, it's just sad. And if we do the permutations and the calculations and statisticians come together to plot a graph for this thing, no matter how much noise we make about it, some people will still be victims to want to still go that back.
Because it will not be their portion. Because this thing Lola is talking about, these girls were not going through the desert. They were being flown. And as you said, they'll probably be a neighborhood person. That might be some of their first times they've seen the airport or you've been on the plane. So as Lola said, it might be a known person who comes, that person comes back and is showing off money, showing off, because I went to work 6 months, and when you have that, you have the people who are willing to put all their life savings to make that dangerous trek through the Libyan desert and some people make it, and then some people start sending money back. So they're hearing countering narratives. And there is something to be said oftentimes with a lack of education when you are struggling to eat, when you're struggling to house yourself. Whatever your education is telling you, will go to the back. You'll go to the back corner when you are struggling.
This national agency this NOA. I've tried to avoid NOA today. Sorry, I know it's your ministry. But do you know that when I was younger, do you remember when they used to do campaigns on a daily basis?
All languages.
I know you might not, but do you know we are broadcasters, we're media practitioners. We know the importance of advertising. Sometimes the things you see, it registers with you. They used to do this, don't follow strangers. It was good for trafficking. It was a lot of messaging that registered with low-income earners, with people, any soap opera you watch, it will be after it, so that you are not lured. But we don't have any of these things happening. And you know that this time that we
used to do AIDS, no, they show from face. I remember that. It was radio broadcasts, it was radio promos, it was radio shows, it was radio messaging, it was TV. And now you wonder, is it that you don't care anymore that your citizens are still falling into this?
What's the agency doing?
I want to say, I mean, if you look at their
honestly,
if you look at the age bracket between 19 to 39, okay, 26, 27 to 39.
But those are balad being called
19-year-old, 20-year, and I'm sorry.
But you want to say 26-year no good sense.
Hey, that's what I'm saying.
I'm saying I understand that they are, they're in that position, but I'm not trying to blame the parents. But if a 19-year-old, 20-year-old is leaving the shores of the country, and I'm tired of this selective blindness that parents do just because they expect their children to be their insurance, right? They don't want to know what you're doing. They just want you to bring money. And so a 19-year-old is leaving your house and you don't care what the job is. That's why I said I understand 26 and above.
And that's why I'm still come back to when they used to take things like
don't know. So let's not forget, these guys are going to use a lot of tactics. What if they were just telling them, what if they didn't even tell them they're taking out of the country? What if they told them they're just taking them to Lagos? Or they're just taking them to Abuja to work? But for them to be going out of the country, let's also not forget, these people have to get passports. So now I'm even starting to wonder, you're intercepting them, you've gotten these 19 to 39-year-old, 13 of them. Who are the people who gave them passports? What's the racket involved? This racket is not just the ones transporting the girls. We need to look at the pipeline. The people who go to the villages or who go to wherever and they talk to them. The people who convince them. The people who give them documents. The people who give them passports. The people who give them tickets. The people waiting to receive them. It is a pipeline
to bring their words to this same Lagos.
But you know a lot of children. You see, we're talking about low income earners.
To do domestic help, you go to the village, you bring people. Oh, take my child, this Lagos, where you go. Like I said, there was a report I was doing. A 15-year-old was brought to Lagos for prostitution. But she was told at the village that the girl is coming to work.
To be a house, and then will be sent to school as well.
Yes.
That one.
Oh, that one is a common scam.
Airport or entering plane or going to Baghdad. This even starts from within us.
And again, when we talk about
vigilant,
there's so many things that trickle. It all intersects. When we're talking about Planned Parenthood, I know a lot of children that their parents just give birth to them and expect them to nurture themselves.
Yeah.
I've seen 4-year-olds that have you can't even say this is the parent. They just expect this child to so whatever the way the child wanders. So if anybody offers to take them off their hands, it seems like
they're so quick.
And that's why they have Adubo.
That's how many of them are raped, harassed, sexually assaulted.
They get into gangs, into drugs, into different kinds. So there's a parenting crisis. Yes. And there's a part of it that, yes, poverty can affect parenting, but not to the point of giving up your responsibilities. And when we talk about having a national population conversation in Nigeria, people bring religion and tradition into it. But meanwhile, the same religions are telling you to be able to take care of the children that you have.
The Almajiri crisis in the north,
parents.
The Almajiri crisis, they are like homeless, parentless children that they don't gather somewhere and they teach Islam to.
No, they're not gathered though. A lot of them are actually handed over to the Almajiri teachers, supposedly.
And they just wander from place to place.
And you don't look back again for a child you gave birth to.
For me, this conversation goes beyond this stage. I commend NAPTIP, and I really hope that it's not just intercepting them. These girls can truly be helped. Because some of these parents now, they will even shake me for NAPTIP, say who sent them. My child for don't travel, in destiny for don't change, see what they do. All those ones are still there. Now, if these children are not properly taken care of, they might go back to a loveless home where their parents will look at them like your destiny no good. Why you be like saying only you the catch for airport?
But wait, what about the parents' destiny?
They are not going to do that.
Let's go on a break.
Anyway, you're watching Jasiri, but when the conversation continues, we'll talk very important talk today. Today we're going to be talking about Nigeria's fight against corruption. All that today. And joining us for that conversation is Nnenna Eze, Communication Manager for the Public and Private Development Center. The discussion comes up after this break.
Now, Nigeria's long battle against corruption has shown a flicker of progress. The country's score on the 2024 Corruption Perception Index has inched up to 26 out of 100, a slight improvement from last year's 25. While that may seem like a small gain, it has pushed Nigeria 5 spots up on the global rankings, moving from 145th to 140th out of 180 nations. But before we celebrate and pop the champagne, the reality remains stark. Corruption is still deeply entrenched, and one of the biggest enablers is Nigeria's justice system. The CPI report highlights that weak and compromised legal structures allow corruption to thrive, a challenge not just in Nigeria, but across the African continent, where most nations continue to stagnate in their anti-corruption efforts. Looking at the global stage, Denmark, Finland, and Singapore top the list as the least corrupt countries, proving that strong institutions and zero tolerance for corruption can make a difference. And on the flip side, South Sudan, Somalia, and Venezuela sit at the bottom of the rankings, showing just how damaging corruption can be to economic development and social stability.
Now, notably, no African country made it into the global top 10. However, Cape Verde stands out, ranking 35th worldwide with a score of 62, a testament to the fact that African nations can make significant progress with the right policies and accountability measures in place. Yet, in Nigeria, corruption still thrives in multiple sectors, from judicial corruption and state capture to nepotism, whistleblower suppression, the erosion of press freedom, oil theft, and subsidy fraud, so many more. So while progress has been made, the question remains, is Nigeria doing enough to tackle corruption head-on, or are these improvements just surface level? Well, joining us this morning to break it all down is Nnenna Eze. She is the Communication Manager for the Public and Private Development Center, an NGO that works to ensure government transparency and accountability. Nnenna, welcome to Jasiri. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, well, thank you for having me.
Thank you. So Nnenna, let's go straight into it. So Nigeria's CPI score improved slightly from 25 to 26 last year. So that means it moved up 5 positions in the global ranking. So, I know this indicates modest progress, but corruption remains pervasive. Some are excited about the upward move, others are just there. What does this really translate to?
Well, the Corruption Perception Index moving up, Nigerians index moving up from 25 to 26, though it's commendable, but I would say it's not significant. It's not a significant shift, and it's important to note that the index doesn't measure some of the initiatives that the anti-corruption agencies are working on, and it is the perception of think tanks, business people and experts in the field. So though we have improved, by 1 point, which is 26 out of 100, which I mean, it's not even on the average. It's not half the mark, and we have been dwindling in this position, in the 20th position, for over a decade now, and for a country that has so much policies, so much reforms that are being put in place, so much efforts with the CSOs, with think tanks, with institutional international partners. It's very underwhelming to see the progress that we have made, and this is due to the systematic corruption that has been deeply rooted in our country in Nigeria. So we see that there is opacity in access to information. The procurement cycle we don't have access to data, and we have seen that corruption is very prevalent in the procurement sector and the procurement processes. We have also seen that.
Go ahead. I can hear you.
All right. We have also seen that over $18 billion yearly, have been lost to corruption cases in Nigeria, and you can only imagine what that amount of money would do to the economy. So though we have improved by just 1 point out of 100, 26 over 100, it's important that we acknowledge the fact that we have progressed just a tiny bit, but it's not a significant improvement.
All right. Thank you very much, Nnenna.
I think we should ask, what is responsible for the progress? 1 point looks like a very small thing, but is there anything particularly notable that you would say is responsible for the progress? And I ask that with all temerity, because when we look at situations like the EFCC, Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, almost all of its heads eventually somehow leave the EFCC under some kind of cloud. So you talk about the fact that we lose so much to corruption cases. The EFCC is one of the biggest agencies responsible for fighting corruption cases in Nigeria. But a lot of their heads exit with a cloud of suspicion of whether it's corruption or mismanagement or not. So what's responsible for even this 1% or 1 point move that Nigeria has made? Do you think there's anything in particular that we've done differently?
Yes, definitely. So I would say some of the factors that have contributed to our upward movement in the index is, first of all, some of the higher profile cases that we have been able to highlight. Even though we haven't seen them to fruition, we haven't gotten judgment, adequate judgment for those cases, but we have been able to actually take those cases to court and start that process. Some other factors that can be accredited to the upward movement in the index is some of the policies that we have made on open government partnership. For instance, the open contracting initiative that mandates our government to proactively disclose information and have digital systems in place for procurement processes. So these are some of the attributes that have contributed to our upward movements in the index.
All right, thank you very much, Nnenna. Now that we know that we have improved, but we need to start to look at some of the things that have kept us, in this particular place that we've been in for so long. The CPI report highlights that weakening justice systems have allowed corruption to thrive in Nigeria. What would you say are some of the issues with Nigeria justice system that actually allows corruption to thrive? And how can the country strengthen its judicial systems so that they ensure that we have effective deterrence against corrupt practices?
Well, it's quite obvious that our judicial system is very corrupt. We have seen this in various reports that some big institutions have published. The Chatham House in 2024 revealed that over 61% of judges were likely to collect bribe to change the ruling. We have the ICPC's corruption index in 2020 that revealed that judges and the magistrates have received the highest amount of cash bribes, despite the fact that they are not, they have the least interaction with citizens. And then we have the UNODC, saying the same thing. So we have these reports that have highlighted the weakness in our judicial system. And some key factors to that weakness is political interference, and it's almost like if you are able to, for instance, steal a huge sum of money, you're able to pay your way, slow the system down and get away with what you've done. We have the judicial system is also weakened by the slow processes, which frustrates, the efforts of the anti-corruption agencies, or even reduces the public trust in the judicial system. So it's the slow processes of prosecution, the fact that when cases are taken to the courts, it's there forever. So we need to find a way to have speedy dispensation of this high-profile cases. And we see that some countries in Europe have been able to establish, not Europe, in Africa, have been able to establish an institution that only, takes on high-profile corruption and economic crime cases. So what this allows is for speedy dispensation. So we are not spending 7-10 years in court for a case that, Yes, so that is some of the things that we can do for the judicial sector. Also, we have
hold on, Nnenna.
emphasize.
You raise an interesting point in terms of the length, because we know some cases have been in court 15 years. In fact, some governors will have a case as they're leaving, find themselves in the National Assembly, still have a case, leave the National Assembly, and the case is still on, and it's adjourned. And in terms of the perception, because this is a perception index, sometimes corruption is not as bad as it's perceived, but the perception of it is also very damaging. So I'd like you to quickly talk to us about the perception of corruption in Nigeria. There are several things that this particular index looked at. And when you look at those things, these are things that Nigerians themselves have also complained about as well. So it looks at bribery and extortion, embezzlement and misuse of public funds, judicial independence, police and security corruption, public procurement fraud, which you've mentioned, as well as freedom of the press, anti-corruption efforts, and political integrity as well. In terms of the perception of corruption in Nigeria, what do you think it costs us? What do you think it costs Nigerians when we perceive that justices or the judicial system is corrupt, when we perceive that police are corrupt, when we perceive that the government is corrupt? And what does it cost us for people to also perceive us as a corrupt country?
So it's very important, first of all, for the economy. The World Bank still restates that we are the biggest economy in Africa. So when other countries, when other investors perceive us as corrupt, it's very difficult for us to attract foreign investors into our country, which of course would affect our economy, our GDP, and things along that line. So when we are perceived for corruption in terms of bribery, and we've seen reports of tourists who have visited Nigeria in the past few months giving an account, and that's one of the powers and beauties of social media, is that you can report real life instances. So we've seen them reporting how from the airports, they are being asked for bribe, being asked to grace the pockets of some of these officials who are working at the airport, down to their hotels or down to where, they get services, hotels, restaurants. It's a long list of people service providers, both public and private, collecting or asking for bribe. And another aspect of that is our freedom of press. When foreigners see that the government is impeding on the freedom of press, freedom of expression, it tramples upon our democracy. Which an interesting fact about this index report is, it stated that countries with full democracies ranked an average of about 73. Countries with a little bit of democratic interference ranked 47, and non-democratic countries ranked, I think, 33, an average of 33 points, and Nigeria ranked 26. So what does this say about our democracy? It ultimately trickles down to the freedom of expression. We heard about the Free Daniel instance that happened last year, where he was detained. He was invited, by security agencies for questioning, but then he was detained unlawfully, for over almost a week, if I'm not mistaken. And these are some of the things that, international organizations, these are some of the things that influence the perception of our corruption, because you can't, the law states that you cannot have someone in custody for over 3 days or 2 days without charging them. And Mr. Daniel, the journalist, wasn't charged and he was unlawfully detained. So when you're cramping upon press freedom, freedom of expression, even the freedom to protest, without violence, a peaceful protest, you are sending out an impression that it's not a democratic society as we claim, to be. And basically, foreign investment, foreign attraction is not going to be, brought into the country.
All right, Nnenna, please let's hold on. We need to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Stay with us.